You're about to collapse. 10 squad.
Hey guys, welcome to the channel. Today we're going to have a look at the best console settings for Hyperscape. So if you're looking to get better at the game and start off on the right track, make sure to watch the complete video as I'll be covering everything from sensitivity and how to secretly map your button layout. Not many people are aware of this, and it will drastically improve your gameplay before you've even had your first game. Also, leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you happen to find this video helpful, and share it around so no one starts off on the wrong foot. So starting off with the most important setting, the controller layout. Without the right setup, you could be putting yourself at a huge disadvantage, and more so if you've got a standard controller like myself. I find the jump shoulder preset, which is the fourth preset in the game, as the most optimal setup for Hyperscape. You should be familiar with this layout if you have played Apex or Warzone, but for those of you who aren't, this setup swaps crouch and slide with R3 and jump with L1. This basically minimizes the amount of time your thumbs are off the stick and allows you to actually aim while jumping and sliding. These two simple changes will greatly impact your gameplay and lets you move in a way you wouldn't be able to with a default layout. The only issue I have with this preset is that ping is set to R1 and my secondary hack is set to circle. You don't really want ping to take up a key button on your controller, and to change this you will need to customize your button layout outside of the game. You can do this by going into your PS4 settings, then accessibility, button assignments, and then click on customize button assignments. Here you can swap all the buttons on your controller, and all I did was swap circle with R1. If you feel the need to swap more buttons around, feel free to do so, but do keep in mind the changes made in here do not show up in game. So the circle button will show up next to your secondary hack even though we've changed it to R1. Also, the changes made in your PS4 settings will affect all other games. So remember to reset your button layout if you decide to play a different game, or just make sure to readjust the buttons in every game. Unfortunately, this is the only workaround available at the moment, and hopefully we'll get more options in the near future. Moving on, controller vibrations should be turned off as it tends to interfere with your aim and it will slightly extend the battery life of your controller. My map cursor sensitivity is set to 100 and I'd recommend matching it with your in-game sensitivity, otherwise you'll get put off by the sudden change in sensitivity when you open and close the map. Next up, we have a bunch of sensitivity options, and as you can see, I've set my vertical sensitivity 25 and my horizontal sensitivity to 60. You're probably wondering why my vertical sense is so different from my horizontal sense, and the reason for this is I'm used to having a slower vertical sensitivity from playing Battlefield. The aim ratio in Battlefield is about 48%, and I'm trying to stick as close to that as possible to get a familiar feel. My advice to you is don't just copy my sensitivity, but rather try and replicate your ideal sensitivity. For example, if your vertical and horizontal sensitivities are identical in Warzone, then you're better off sticking to a 100% aim ratio rather than trying something different that may feel alien to you. The general rule of thumb for sensitivity is you don't want a sensitivity that's too slow, as that will limit your reaction time, and you don't want a super fast sensitivity, as that will make it harder for you to be precise. Finding a sweet spot in between the two extremes is what you should be aiming for. The following two sensitivity settings are purely for when you're aiming down sight. So if you set this to 100, it will match your hipfire sensitivity, and if you set this to 50, you'll get half the hipfire speed when you aim down sight. You can do this for both low zoom and high zoom weapons, and if you're wondering which one applies to which weapon, it's quite simple. All weapons in the game have a low zoom sight except for the Protocol and Dragonfly. So basically the ADS high zoom sensitivity only applies to the sniper and the semi-auto rifle. Both of mine are set to 50%, which is half the speed of my hipfire sensitivity, and that's mainly because there's an abundance of aim acceleration. There's no option to turn this off, but if we do get the option in the future, then I'll definitely be changing my ADS sensitivity. I'll keep you guys updated when the time comes. Moving on, look inversion should be set to disabled, but if you're used to having inverted controls, then feel free to turn this on. Next up, we have the left stick dead zone, and for those of you who may not know, the dead zone is usually a tiny circle located at the center of your joystick that doesn't respond to any stick movement. This usually prevents stick drift and is something you want to avoid if your controller is a bit worn out. However, setting your dead zone too high could lead to your joystick becoming too unresponsive, and that means you'll need to use more force to initiate a sprint or to sidestep back into cover. A few milliseconds makes all the difference in Hyperscape, and that's why I've set mine to 5, which is the lowest you can go. Give it a try in the practice range, and if you get any stick drift without touching your controller, then increase it until it stops. My right analog stick dead zone is set to 13%, and the main reason for that is you don't want your aim all over the place when you make small movements. This also prevents your crosshair from moving when you press down R3 to crouch. However, if you have a really slow sensitivity, then you can definitely get away with a lower dead zone. Again, try it out in a practice range and see how it feels. Aim assist is set to standard, and I wouldn't really recommend turning this off unless you feel it's too strong and doing more harm than good. Both crouch and sprint should be set to toggle because holding down both buttons when aiming down sight is a bit ludicrous. Vaulting should be set to on, and this will cut down the amount of buttons you'll need to press. Damage stacking should be set to short delay to get better feedback. This will aid you in making decisions during gunfights, and not having it on will only hurt you. Inventory wheel should be set to hold, and this will make it a lot easier to manage your items. Just hold down the D-pad to keep it open and let go once you're done, instead of having to press the D-pad down multiple times. And for the same reason, your inventory wheel should auto close after dropping an item. The world map mode should be set to toggle, and that will free up your thumb and allow you to move around while having the map open. Auto switch weapon when empty should be turned on, and this doesn't really need much explaining. For the rest, all my UI settings are set to default, and I don't see a reason to change any of them unless you're fed up with the ping notification. In video settings, you should set your brightness anywhere in between 50 to 60%, and this will slightly improve your visibility, but I wouldn't recommend going any higher than 60% as it tends to get a bit too bright and make everything look washed out. All my audio settings are set to default, and the only other change I've made is turning off subtitles. I don't see a reason to have subtitles appear at the bottom of my screen, but again, this is all personal preference. Apart from that, I've made no other changes, and that really concludes this guide. So those are the best console settings for Hyperscape, and I hope I've been helpful today. If you have any questions, leave them down below, and I'd appreciate a rating on the video. Subscribe for more Hyperscape content, and I'll see you later. Take care.